All right. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for being with me today and agreeing to record. I've been following you for a while now, since about 2020 when I heard you back on another podcast. And so, again, very excited to talk today and learn about your journey with money.
It's great. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about money, so we're in the right place.
Yes, we are. All right. Why are you so passionate about personal finance? Let's just set the stage a little, really briefly to get the listeners to know what brings you here or why I'd like to hear more from you.
I think a few reasons. One, I think money kind of like underlies so much pain and anxiety and shame and difficulty in our world. It's almost like every decision that many of us make is fueled by money, and it and a lot of us we don't learn it in high school or college, and so a lot of us get into adulthood and have this like critical tool called money that kind of like drives our whole lives, and we don't know anything about it, and then so we feel shame and embarrassment around it. And so that's why I'm passionate about like teaching it, and I also just like it. I'm like a numbers guy and a math guy, and it's interesting to me. And so while some people like kite surfing or skydiving are much more cool endeavors, I like Roth IRAs and index funds just because it speaks to the fiber of who I am.
hmm Okay, well, let's find out how you got here and why this became a passion of yours. And so, what is your first or earliest memory of money?
I I think my very earliest, if I'm like really going back, because I think when I was a little tiny child, like 3 or 4 or 5, I had a little cashier um toy that had like colorful coins made out of plastic, and you could like put them into the like little till or put them into a gumball machine or something like that. And so, that's not really money, but I guess it's my earliest memory. I think the earliest time I remember actually having money be an issue is I remember being in fifth grade and I wanted new shoes. And this was like I was born in 1980, and so this was like Nike Air infancy years, and all the cool kids were wearing Nike Airs. My parents said I need new shoes. They said you can only spend $40 on your shoes max, and like Nike Airs were like more than $40 even back then. Um, and I remember going to the shoe store and just like looking through every single like bargain basement or bargain bin discount sale, and I did find a pair of Nike Airs, and they were so ugly. They were like pink and green neon and like white and like just like not cool at all, not the ones the other one wearing, but it did say Nike Air on the back. So I was like, all right, this qualifies. I'm getting them. They're under 40. And then I wore them to school, and everyone made fun of me because they're so ugly. And I was like, oh man, I failed. I thought I was gonna be cheered because I had Nike Airs, and the budget failed me. So I do remember being limited by my fifth grade shoe budget.
My goodness. How did that make you feel?
Well, I remember being sad that I was made fun of. I remember feeling like I made a mistake by prioritizing this brand over the, all I was looking for was Nike Air on the back. I wasn't looking for the comfort or design or anything else. Um, so I feel like I failed. I don't remember really blaming the budget. Like I guess I wished, just as a child as I wish I could just have whatever I wanted, but I kind of took it more of a lesson as like I was I was prioritizing the wrong things. I mean, this is a 43-year-old trying to get into the mind of a 10-year-old or whatever it was. Um, but yeah, I definitely felt bad, and I remembered not liking those shoes and feeling like I made a big mistake by picking them.
Yeah, kids could really cause you to like rethink, like, my goodness, even like you were so proud of that decision because it said Nike, but then like in an instant you go to school and your whole perception or like now you don't like the shoes anymore. And
Yeah.
that's just part of growing up, unfortunately, and human nature. Even as adults, some of those same things and mindsets and decisions play out. Um, Do you remember receiving any formal lessons about money or having any discussions with any adults when you were younger about money?
I do. I mean, certainly from my parents. My parents were frugal, and that was instilled in me, throughout my childhood. I remember at school a moment where my mind was expanded, where I saw a compound growth spreadsheet, essentially, where, you know, you would be putting away $500 a month or $100 a month or whatever it was. And if you got a certain rate of return, like a 10% return on your money, after a year or two, nothing really happened. But if you kept going down the spreadsheet, and what you see after like year 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 30, the numbers got crazy. And you could put away just like a couple $100 a month, and as long as you're getting this rate of return and this compound growth, you kind of saw this exponential growth happen. And um, I think that was instilled in me at a young age, where it's like, ooh, okay, putting money away early and often is a really valuable technique to make a lot of money snowball over time.
Was that a personal finance class or just
That was math. I think that was a math class. I was very fortunate to I went to public school in Southeast Michigan, and it was a good public school. But I was fortunate to have teachers who talk about money. Actually, I have an even earlier lesson. I remember in fifth grade, same fifth grade with the Nikes. Actually, this is a lot. I'm talking a lot about fifth grade on this podcast. But my teacher, Mrs. Galeda, who I actually looked up recently, she was very, very old when I was in fifth grade. I looked up recently to like thank her for her great teaching, and she sadly passed away, which made me realize I need to thank people sooner before they die, because that's what happens in life.
yeah.
But she had a stock picking class for us, where this was like pre-internet. Man, I feel old, but we would like get a newspaper and we'd like choose stocks and we'd like track them day over day. And we were in fifth grade, so I think it was like very unscientific, but it just the introduction to the existence of it, I think, was something different than what a lot of people experience, which is the stock market is so foreign and scary that you couldn't possibly even um, touch it without like being a Wall Street insider. Whereas we were just a bunch of fifth graders, like kind of randomly picking ticker symbols from the newspaper and then seeing how they did over time. And I think that helped just make it less scary later in life when I needed to, do it for real with real money.
Yeah. And I love that because I teach in the summers, like summer camp, personal finance summer camp, and I'm always toying around with what I'm going to teach, but I do believe the introduction, all of it is super important. The graph, the I love talking about the compound interest and showing that number, and it just makes a difference. And I know, and I enjoy the middle schoolers and high schoolers because they get it more. And I feel like it's really good preparation for them. So,
That's
and
amazing. Yeah. Middle school, it sounds young, but middle schoolers are smart. Elementary school is probably a little young. They still need to like kind of learn math and stuff before compound growth really makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, we can be teaching, I talk to 30 and 40 and 50-year olds who don't know this stuff, but it's not like the concepts are so complex they can't wrap their heads around it. It's just that they haven't been introduced to it, they haven't learned it. So yeah, like I love
yeah,
starting that young.
yeah, it's yeah. I enjoy teaching them. They're so engaged too. So when did you start working? What do you remember what your first job was?
I think my very first paid job, like on paper, not counting like, you know, lemonade stands or chores around the house or whatever. Well, I worked for a summer camp for like 8 weeks, and I think I was 16 or 17, and I think I made $1,200 for the summer. And yeah, it was not, I don't even know if it was minimum wage. I don't know how they got away with like paying someone like, $100 a week or whatever. But yeah, I remember that was my first job. And one cool thing about that is my dad, when he realized I was going to be like on paper with reportable income, that made me eligible to contribute to an IRA, which is something that many adults aren't doing yet. But he basically made me he gave me a gift and said, "Hey, I'm going to donate or gift you basically a match of what you made." So like little 16 or 17-year-old Jeremy can keep the money he made for his, spending throughout the school year. But then I will donate it, or I'll match them with like $1,000, and we'll contribute all of it to a Roth IRA. And we opened up the account and transferred the money in and picked some mutual funds. And I just thought that was what everyone did at 16 and 17. And then when I was like in my 30s, I would ask people, now that I've been had a Roth IRA for 15 years, I asked people like, "Hey, what's in your Roth IRA?" And they would say, "What's a Roth IRA?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, where do you keep your mutual funds? What's a mutual fund?" And so that's kind of like what also inspired me to start teaching this stuff, because man, it's really important to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you got such a head start on a lot of people, but I think a lot of people, well, I know, a lot of people follow and enjoy what you share. You have so much knowledge and experience. So you've never, is it safe to say you've never been the type to be irresponsible with money? What were like your early adulthood years like with money? Because I do know that you sold a business, you had a business, sold it, and you were quite young when that happened. Is that correct?
Depends on perspective. I started a company when I was coming out of college at 22 or so, and I sold it when I was 34 for just over $5 million. And so I worked for 12 years in the company, sold it for 5 million. My share after taxes was about 2 million. So I walked away with like $2 million in my checking account on one day, which was very nice. Um, what did you ask about?
What were your like financial habits when that?
Oh, did I make any mistakes? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I think frugality was like beat into me so much as a child. I have never been an excessive spender. Um, I do think part of being successful with money is spending it sometimes. The goal of money isn't to die with the most. If you die with the most, then you have not fully utilized the tool, right? I think the goal of money is to maximize your life value. I think some people spend too much too early when they basically get themselves into massive amounts of debt and then are living paycheck to paycheck and very anxious and scared. That's not good. But I think some people can go the other way too and save too much and never spend anything. Um, and so I think some of my, I've definitely wasted a bunch of money. I've made bad investments. I bought Sears Canada stock one day when I thought I was going to go up like 10 or $20,000 of it, and it went to zero. I invested in some oil drilling thing that a friend turned me on to, and it went to zero. I've certainly like made mistakes. Um, but I also think one of my mistakes is just not spending enough. I think I'm 43 now. I think probably a lot of my 20s and 30s, I maybe could have been spending more or doing a better job spending on the things that mattered most to me, like, jumping on travel opportunities, um, jumping on the things that make sense to do in your 20s that don't really make sense to do in your 40s. I think that's part of the money decisions that we have.
What are some things you can't do now in your 40s, would you say? I
I
have I
feel
have
weird. Wait, what'd you say?
I am in the same spot, or I'll talk about me after, but like what are some things you wouldn't do now that you might have considered in your 20s?
I feel weird now going to a hostel in like, backpacking around,
That's
you know,
literally my answer.
really,
That's
right?
literally
Like,
my answer.
right. I, when I was 20 or 25 or whatever, you could like go to New Zealand for a month or go backpack around Europe or South America and go to a hostel, and there's a bunch of other 20 somethings there. And, even if you're like 29, you might feel like there's a bunch of gap year 22-year-olds or 20-year-olds or whatever it is. Now, like in my early 40s, I still feel like, I actually just got engaged like 4 days ago. And so I got engaged late in life and my single days are over. But, up until a couple of years ago, I was basically single and I like wanted to do those types of things. I was like, well, I'm sitting here, but I feel like I can't, because it's just too weird. So, those types of travel opportunities are different, when you're 40s. There's nothing you can do when you're in 40s. You can go with your now fiance and go to nice resorts or whatever, whatever is on that phase of life. But yeah, also things like I just read a book called Die with Zero, which does a great job of basically painting a picture that while the compound growth chart says, hey, when you're 80, you're going to have this amazing amount of money, there's like a life health chart that's like decaying and your knees are getting worse and your energy is getting lower. And, people who are in their 80s generally don't want to go backpacking around Europe because they don't want to walk a lot, or maybe they just like staying at home more, or whatever it is. And so while the money might be getting more as you get older, your health and energy and excitement and wonder and things like that might be getting less. And so you want to be, basically taking this year to go skydiving if you want to skydive, not wait for 10 more years.
Yeah. And I'm so shocked. I was so shocked. My face said it that that was your answer because that's literally me as well. I feel like there's no right or wrong. Obviously, like your path is your path, and where you could say you could have been saving that money and allowing it to compound and grow. Here we are, like, oh, I wish would have done more of that in my early years and wouldn't have been so strict with money. So I think your path is your path, but we're still here and we can still do some of the things, even if it's a different experience. Um, Earlier, you mentioned a few of the financial mistakes you've made. Do you, can you, or would you mind sharing some detail about some of those? What were the mistakes, how you felt about them, and how you overcame those mistakes? Because a lot of people lose money a lot of the time, especially with the scammers and grifters out here. Um, and how do you bounce back from that?
I think almost every one of my, at least investing mistakes, can kind of fall under the umbrella of I made things too complicated. And when you first hear about the world of investing, it's a very complex sounding place because there are futures and options and day trading and Bitcoin and gold and shorts and GameStop and all this crazy complexity. And you just imagine like seeing the Wolf of Wall Street and these guys on the trading floor and the stock exchange frantically waving pieces of paper over their head and shouting. And you're like, how could I possibly enter that world? And if I do enter that world, I need to be doing some really sophisticated stuff, like making some complex decisions. But the crazy thing about this world of investing is the more complex you make it, the worse it is for you. And I often see these like really clickbaity internet videos where it's like millionaires don't want you to know blank. And it's almost always nonsense. Most millionaires, like I know a lot of millionaires, and they're all really nice people, and they will gladly sit down and have a coffee with you and tell you exactly what they do to make money. And usually it's they spend less than they make and they invest the difference. But I will say like that one secret I think that the financial services industry doesn't want you to know is that the financial services industry doesn't make money by making you more money. I think they want you to believe that, hey, you go put your money with an insurance guy or a financial advisor guy or an investment guy, and like they're gonna make you more money, and that's how they make money. But they really make their money by charging fees. And so when you invest through these complex, either insurance products or financial advisors, or on your own by picking and choosing stocks or getting into these complex situations, all that complexity does not favor you. And if I could like go back in time to like, whenever I've made my money throughout my life, whether it was selling my company or just earning along the way, and just stuck my money in the most simple, basic little target date index fund and just let it ride until today, I would have much more money, all of um, my investment mistakes are because I was getting into complex things like, ooh, I'm gonna buy this dividend stock, or I'm gonna get into this oil drilling thing, or I'm gonna buy a bunch of tricky ETFs and try to make some moves. Whereas if I just stuck it in this most boring thing And people love poo-pooing the boring thing because there's no salespeople pushing the boring thing. There's no commissions for the boring thing. And so there's no one defending it except for me because I don't have a horse in this race either way. But if I put all my money in the boring thing, I would have more money. And I think that's true for almost everybody. And the people who would make more money doing complex stuff are almost always lucky, not good, right? I think we all have this belief that if I can get smart enough and read the Wall Street Journal or look at some charts on a fancy screen, then I can outperform. But it's basically all not true. It's just sometimes people get lucky and that's fine. But if you do the simple, boring thing that and minimize expenses, take those fees and commissions out of the pockets of the financial services industry, you, the individual, will do better.
Yeah, and I completely agree. When I first got graduated from college and got into personal finance, I was one of those people. I did not know any better. So, but I can tell you firsthand that we weren't doing anything very special for you. Um, so once I really learned and my eyes were open to what was really happening, I left and focused on providing financial education and instead of sales. But yeah, it's very simple. It's much more simple than they'd like you to believe. They're not going to make money if you don't believe that you need them. So
Can you share what company you worked for? Have you shared that before?
I will not share.
Was it an
The
insurance company or was it an
It
investment
was
company?
both. It was both. They had both. The name has changed. Um, but they weren't a huge player. They were in the back, like if you knew about them because we had some top ranking funds. But we didn't advertise. So when
Right.
you don't advertise and so
Yeah. But I
um
mean, it speaks to like everyone I've talked to in the industry says the same thing essentially, which is like you weren't magically making better outcomes for your customers. You were trying to sell your products so you could maximize the company's profits, right? And it's kind of sad that this term financial advisor has just been so devastated by salespeople in the industry pushing commissioned products or trying to manage your money for a compounding fee or whatever it is that individuals who want to go seek financial advice rightly feel terrified to talk to a financial advisor because they don't know what this person's agenda is, right? And that's a tough part of this financial advice industry.
I know, and trying to differentiate yourself and separate yourself from those people. And, it's sad also because sometimes when you're that person, you don't know what you're doing. At least I didn't until once I did figure it out, I was like, oh, I cannot do this. Um, and so it's just the industry itself. It's so sad that these companies take advantage of the ignorance of not only the consumer, but even the sales people and the employees. So, but it is our role to try to educate people as much as we can through our platforms. Um, and were the losses you took like well, they obviously weren't devastating. They didn't hurt too much, but I'm sure affected you in some ways. What would you say? How were you affected with those losses?
I will say one thing I give myself credit for is all of the worst stuff I did with a relatively small amount of money. And so anyone can be tempted to get into something riskier. Like, ooh, I got a hot tip from a dude at a picnic, or I just got a gut feeling about this stock or this investment, whatever it is. I suggest those people hold yourself to the 90-10 rule, which is 90% of your portfolio buy and hold index funds, which is a simple low cost investment that's going to ride the market and ride it up indefinitely. With all that other risky stuff you want to do, crypto, options, day trading, stock picking, speculative investments, whatever, keep that in your 10%. And so, I remember reading an article about Sears Canada. Sears, I don't even know if Sears is so out of business now. I don't even know if people remember what Sears is, but like it used to be like this massive department store in the US that sold washing machines and snow tires and tools and everything else. And it was like king of the world back in the, when they mailed you a catalog, like the mail order catalog days. And then, the internet came around and they just couldn't compete, and the malls died and they went out of business. And I remember reading like in the early 2010s or something about how Sears Canada is different. It's like, man, it's different. It's more like Target. Canadians love it. Like, while Sears US is going bankrupt, Sears Canada is going to flourish. And this article made this really compelling argument. And the stock price for Sears Canada was really low. It was up at like $40 a share and dropped to $8 a share. And I was like, ooh, if that just goes from 8 to 16, even half of what it used to be, I'll like double my money and I'll be so smart. And so I literally think I put in like, I think it was $10,000. I don't think I even, I hope that was within my 10%. It was a lot of my time. And then it went from like $8 a share to $2 a share. So my 10,000 became whatever it was, like 1,600 or whatever it is. And then I put another 10,000. I was like, okay, now I can get it's like almost like a gambler mentality. I was like, okay, now if it goes from two just to five, doesn't even need to go back to where it was. Then I'll like get all my money back. And then went from $2 a share to zero. It just went bankrupt. Like, of course it was going to. And at this point, it seems so obvious to say that, like, oh, of course Sears went bankrupt, you idiot. But like, we don't know those things in the moment, right? Like Apple Computer, when I was in college, was a joke. Like Microsoft had to bail Apple out just to like make sure they still had a competitor, so they didn't get like antitrust. Apple Computer was Sears, and when I was in college, like it was that much of a joke. Like they weren't even serious machines. There was no serious software. No one used them. It was just getting worse and worse every year. Um, and now it's the biggest company on earth. Like no one is calling. Like it seems obvious now that we know, but no one is calling that. So yeah, it's. I know I'm just rambling, but I guess I feel very sad that I lost all my money in Sears Canada, and a few other speculative investments. But I kept it relatively small, and it's just a reminder that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And when you think you do, you're almost certainly wrong, because humans are way worse at predicting things than we feel like we are. We feel like we can see patterns in this world and we know what's going to happen, but that is almost never true. And only with the benefit of hindsight do we like rewrite history and rewrite our memory, like, oh yeah, of course, Apple Computer was always this. No, you didn't know that. You didn't know Sears Canada was going out of business. We don't know anything going forward. We just tell ourselves it seems obvious in hindsight.
Yeah, we don't know. We truly don't know. Even if it's similar, the situation is similar, how people behave. There are so many factors that could influence how things go with the market, with an investment. I was reading in a behavioral finance book about just how we forget. We're quick to forget as well. And just things change and how we react change. And again, they were selling you the Sears investment. I got a message earlier from one of the financial sites, what stocks to pick. You don't go by that. You cannot listen to those, because who knows who's on the back end making money off of that, or just in general.
Yeah.
It's
And we all see these headlines. Like people DM me this like every single day. They're like, hey, this headline said X is about to happen. Should I do that or be afraid of that or whatever? And no one ever goes back and looks at the track record of that, right? Well, how many headlines has that, like, newspaper put forward in the past making predictions, and how many of those were correct? And the reality is like they're not, they're just random. There's, some say it's going to go up, some say it's going to go down, some say pick stock A, some pick stock B. And because, we as humans just kind of, I almost feel like there's an evolutionary explanation there, which is, back, in prehistoric days or whatever, if you're talking to another prehistoric human, they're like, hey, I saw water a mile away, and you believe them, that probably benefited you, because probably there was water and you can go that way and find water and hunt or whatever it is that prehistoric humans do. And so we kind of like learn to exchange information and benefit from that. But now it's almost being weaponized against us, because like these stock picking websites, whatever, can like post this headline, and you're like, ooh, water is a mile this way. That's been good for me for the rest of evolution. Maybe I should be taking stock picks based on the information shared with me now. But in reality, that's just a commercial enterprise posting nonsense, because no one's checking their track record, and it's as good as random.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what to say. It's just index is the way to go, pick a very broad investment and invest early and often, as you
and
say,
leave it alone.
but alone.
Yeah.
What other pieces of advice would you share with our listeners?
I mean, the two pieces of advice I always end all of my posts or articles with is very, very simple because the world of finances is very, very complex. And I keep it very simple because we're so likely to get wrapped up in some complexity. And the two very simple pieces of advice are number one, live below your means. And there are some people who make healthy six-figure salaries and are broke. If you make $500,000 a year and you spend $500,000 a year, there's a word for that. It's broke. You have zero. And that's a very stressful way to live because if you get laid off, if there's a tax change, if there's a market change, if like anything blinks, it's on you and the whole house of cards is going to collapse. Whereas if you make $60,000 a year and you spend $50,000 a year, and a lot of people make 50 and spend 50, and if you make 60 and spend 50, that gives you $10,000 a year to save and invest. And so rule number one is to live below your means, and rule number two is to invest early and often. And the combination of those two is like the financial fortress of solitude where you can build your financial fortress around you. You can spend less than you make, you can invest, you can build that wealth. And that's really it. That's 98% of it. And the last 2% is just fine tuning details. What type of account do you open? What investment do you choose? And you know, those things are important to look into. But you know, I think some people get so focused on this. Oh, my friend says Dogecoin's the future. So should I take a loan out to buy Dogecoin? I'm like, oh my God, you are not doing the two rules. You are living beyond your means and you're not investing, you're gambling, right? You know, live below your means, invest early and often. And that's really 98% of the game, and the rest is just kind of figuring out what buttons to click on a website.
It really is just that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy because of, the competition in terms of for our dollars, marketing, ads, everyone just wants us to spend. But yes, it requires a lot of discipline.
Yeah, I love that
Um,
phrase, simple but not easy, because it's kind of like I draw parallels to fitness where I think we all know how to be fit, generally speaking. Again, there's some details, but like if we all eat, like if someone wrote down their weekly schedule and said, okay, I'm gonna eat salad and lean proteins and then I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna stretch in the morning and go for a run every other day, and I'm gonna lift weights. Like I think we could all like formulate a plan. And if we did, I think the plans would generally be pretty good. And then if we execute on that plan, I think we'd all be in incredible shape. It's pretty simple. You eat healthy, you exercise, but it's not easy because, man, that fast food is cheap and right on the way home, and you don't need to get out of your car. And I had a long day at work and I don't have time to cook. And I'm really tired today because the kids don't want to work out. Like, it's so hard. And I think investing is kind of the same way, where it's like pretty simple. Like you spend less than you make, and it's not like you need a PhD in mathematics to like figure it out. But there's just like kind of like you were referring to, there's so much competition for our attention, for our dollars. There's pop culture has like marketing messages sent to us, like, you're led to believe that if you don't have the newest car or the biggest apartment or the fanciest electronics, then you're doing it wrong. But that's not true. You can live, just imagine someone who makes 10 or $20,000 per year less than you, and then live like they live. They're living fine, right? They're happy. You can be happy living like that too. So it's definitely not easy.
You can be happy living like that. It's just it's such a comfort knowing that your finances or feeling that you're okay financially. There's no way to describe that comfort. So tell us what you do and what you're doing now and how the listeners can keep up with you.
Well, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been basically teaching. I retired after I sold my company at the age of 36, and I did nothing for a year. And then I started teaching personal finance and investing, just like we are talking about on this show. And then inspired by that over the last few years, about a year ago, two of my friends and I started a company to basically help this world of financial advice. Because if you talk to a financial advisor, most of the time they're either a commission salesperson or they're charging a annual compounding fee. And it makes it really hard to get unbiased financial advice that way. And so there's this different model called advice only, where you just pay for 1 hour or for one project, and there's no sales pitch, no money management, none of those misaligned incentives. And if you get a financial advisor that way, then you can basically get unbiased fiduciary financial advice without all the strings attached. And so my friends and I created a company called Nectarine, which is a marketplace of advice only financial advisors. So you can go to Nectarine, click find an advisor, filter by your needs, compare prices, compare availability, check out right on the site, meet via Zoom, and then you get a expert financial advisor with great reviews, all that good stuff, just for a clear upfront flat fee, without all the other associated fees and commissions and all that stuff that's so common in the financial advice space. So that's what it is, and it's you can find it at hellonectarine.com. Thank you for the shout out.
Of
Or the
course. Of course. And Personal Finance Club. I
and
hadn't
Personal Finance Club,
heard
yeah.
I hadn't heard of Nectarine, so thank you, of course, for sharing that. But Personal Finance Club as well.
You haven't heard
Well,
of Nectarine? Oh, I'm doing a bad job marketing, but yeah, Personal Finance Club is the financial. It's not your fault; it's my fault. Is my education brand, and it's mostly on Instagram at Personal Finance Club, and we post kind of daily infographics, lessons, tips, tools to kind of learn all this stuff. So you can do it yourself, or you can find all the blog articles and video lessons and stuff like that at personalfinanceclub.com.
all right. Thank you so much for sharing. Congratulations on your engagement. I did not say anything. I didn't want to cut off the audio, but congratulations on the engagement. It's 4 days, so it's pretty fresh. Um, I didn't hit on this, but the reason I reached out for this interview is because you mentioned a few posts ago that you're very cheap or frugal. It was about not wanting to order DoorDash or something because of the fee. And you had to like remind yourself, like, I, it's okay to do this some of the time. Um, since having that like kind of reflection, and was that an epiphany, would you say? Sorry, I'm going back. We're supposed to close out, but I'm remembering
No,
now. Um, yeah, what was that like? Because I, again, am very similar, very frugal person. And like you said, it's okay to spend. We can't take it with us. So enjoy it while we have it, but also have the balance. But yeah, can you explain that a little bit more?
yeah, I think frugality is really baked into my fiber, and I'm still to this day kind of rediscovering like my own relationship with money. I mean, a very recent example, this was literally in the last year, where I was flossing one day with like a little piece of floss that was like, 6 or 8 inches, and it kept slipping on my fingers. And I was so frustrated, and like I don't floss as much as I should because it's such a frustrating experience because of that. And I thought, I'm like, wait, why is this floss so short? And the only answer was that it was to not waste money because you throw it away afterwards. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm literally a multimillionaire. Like now my net worth is over $5 million because of the growth of my investment since I sold my company, and the additional contributions that I put in. And there's no amount of floss I could ever use in my entire life that would even be rounding error compared to that, right? And so the fact that I'm like potentially sacrificing the health of my teeth in the name of frugality is crazy. And so I had to, I had to learn that. And, like you said too, with um, DoorDash, I grew up thinking that paying for any convenience is a mortal sin. Paying for parking, like you cannot pay for car parking. You drive around for hours looking for a free spot. Like valet is so out of pocket. You couldn't even say the word valet in my house. Food delivery, even going out to eat, going out to eat was a rare treat. You know, there's other examples of, any sort of upgrade, like a better concert ticket or a better, say, an airplane, or any sort of paying for convenience fully was burned in me as like a banned activity. And now I need to like maybe unlearn that and say, okay, for sure you can waste a lot of money that way, but I need to like reevaluate my own finances and my own goals and my own, and now, my fiance has a 3-year-old child, and we all live together. And so sometimes I'm on childcare duty, and I am like, okay, it's kind of hard to go to the grocery store with a 3-year-old. It's not, it's not the worst thing I could, but based on my goals that day or whatever, maybe I order grocery delivery. Even saying that, it's hard to let those words escape my lips because it feels like I'm sinning by paying for convenience. I have only done that a couple times in my life when I had COVID or something, and I was got the groceries dropped off my door. Um, but I think that's okay sometimes if your finances permit. I think you have to reevaluate those for reality. And I hope that I'm frugal, not cheap. I think cheap means you don't tip and don't value, you don't value things, just you prioritize money over everything. I think I'm generally pretty good at saying I'd rather have nicer things, just live more minimally than buying a bunch of crap. But I still have lessons to learn for myself.
And I love that you ended on that because that's really what it is. A lot of people look at you and want to get to your position, have a lot of money in the bank, and it's still a struggle mentally, or we all have our thing when it comes to money, whether it's we spend too much or we're too frugal or we spend for the wrong reasons. So we all have our thing. And so I'm very grateful for you to come and share your story. I really appreciate this perspective and sharing with the listeners the experiences that you've had. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. Thanks for doing what you do, for teaching and sharing all your knowledge. I can't wait to get more people spreading the word because it's so valuable. So thank you so much.